How can you add authentication for your MCP servers? Hi, this is Adrian from La Rebellion, and I'm going to show you how to use WorkOS to add authentication for your MCP servers. First of all, let me show you that I have my WorkOS configured right now with 2 users that I was testing before, and here we have test organization. In order to configure WorkOS, you need to configure organization, redirects, application, and enable the dynamic client registration. Let me show you that application. This is the application that I have pre-configured in WorkOS. And here you can just enable the dynamic client registration. That's it. Now let's review the redirects. In the redirects, I have include the MCP inspector. And here you can see that I have only 2 users that I was testing before. Now, my intention is to use API first approach to create MCP servers. And for that, let's create a Swagger specification. Here, I'm going to generate a Swagger with only one endpoint. That's it. We don't need anything else. But we can extend the configuration. And in this case, I'm going to use a separate file because you may not want to modify your original Swagger. So for that, let's extend with this kind security file. We define the cross-origin resource. And in this case, I'm configuring the inspector and my application that I use for testing purposes in the port 8080. For the security, we need to add the client ID. Additionally, we need to add the auth flow. And in this case, the authorization URL and the token URL. If your API doesn't have a well-known authorization, don't worry. With the tool that I'm going to show you, you don't need it. That is going to create that automatically. Now let's start MCP server for our API specification. In this case, you just need to provide the demo project, and that's it. I'm passing here the API.yaml that includes the security configuration. The flag headless is going to be used for the happy server to communicate with a backend without the need to implement any code. If you have an API already up and running, you just point the happy server to your endpoint. That's it. We have an MCP up and running from Swagger specification. Now let's integrate the MCP client with the WorkOS, and from there, the happy server is going to validate the tokens that the WorkOS is providing to the MCP server. I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing this. One with the client ID and one without the client ID. Without the client ID, it is going to be dynamically registered in the WorkOS. Okay, let's start with the client ID. I'm providing a new user. WorkOS is configured to only accept users with domain example.com. With that, the user is created and is authenticated. That's it. Now let's list the tools, and here we have. This is the only endpoint that we configure in our OpenAPI specification. And here we have, this is the user that we just created, and this user approved the application Happy MCP. Now, let me quickly show you how to do an integration without client ID, which is going to dynamically create the application in WorkOS. So I'm going to remove the client ID, and I'm going to trigger again the authentication process. It is going to take the same user, and as you can see here, the MCP inspector is requesting approval to grant the access with my user. And that's it. We have the authentication completed. quickly, let's review in WorkOS what happened. You can see here now that MCP inspector was dynamically created. We didn't do anything, that was automatically created. And that's it. As you can see, with Happy Server, you can easily create MCP servers based on OpenAPI specifications without writing a single line of code. If you want to see the integration with a specific server, just let me know in the comments. Or if you want me to create an integration with a specific API, just let me know. Be happy and go Rebels!